I think one of the most shocking and terrifying things that you will find out as a newlywed is the amount of fighting that will occur in marriage. If you think that you're going to find someone you're attracted to, start dating, get serious, get married, go on a honeymoon, and then life is going to be roses and rainbows, you're in for a huge awakening when you get married. I'm ringing a little bit. It's probably just too hot, the actual mic. Matt Chandler, who wrote a book on the Song of Solomon, Matt Chandler said that he was really worried about this when he was dating his future wife. At the time they were dating and they were getting serious, and he went to his mentor and he said to his mentor, I don't know if Lauren and I are good for each other because we're fighting. And I don't know if I want to get married if we're still fighting. And here's what his mentor said. You are going to fight with someone the rest of your life. Do you want it to be with Lauren? What a weird statement, but an absolutely true statement. You are going to fight with someone the rest of your life. Who do you want that someone to be? You're going to fight with your spouse. This is, by the way, another reason to choose wisely. You will end up marrying somebody that you court. You will end up courting somebody you date. You will end up dating someone that you're attracted to. So you better be attracted to someone with character. Because you will end up marrying somebody and you will fight with that somebody the rest of your life. And you better have picked someone who will fight fair. That's what we're talking about tonight. Fighting fair. What to do, what not to do. How do you fight fair? I have 3 things that I want to talk about. 3 R's. Respond, run, and reconcile. Respond, run, and reconcile. We'll talk about all these. But let's set the scene for a second, okay? Let's set the scene. And everybody looking at me. I want to first talk about expectations in marriage. I would say that most conflicts come because of unmet expectations. Here's what I mean. You expect somebody to love you a certain way. And when they don't love you in the way that you expect, conflict arises. Turn to Song of Solomon, chapter 5. In verse 2, here's what happens. She is the one who is giving us this account, but listen to what happens. She said, I slept, but my heart was awake. A sound, my beloved is knocking. Open to me, my sister, my love, my dove, my perfect one. For my head is wet with dew, my locks with the drops of the night. Here's what seems to be happening. He has been out working. He has worked for a very, very long time. He has obviously worked late into the evening. And in the evening, he finally comes home. We probably know he's been working hard because it says he is wet with like drops of dew. So he's been sweating, he's tired, and he wants to come home, and he wants to come home and be with his wife. I don't know exactly what all the expectations were. I don't know if he thought, I'm going to come home, she's going to have food ready for me, and we're going to sit down, I'm going to wash and get clean, we're going to eat together, and then we're going to have sex. I don't really know all of the expectations, but I know one of the expectations is he wants to be with her. So he comes home and he says, open the door to me. Let me come in. Let me spend time with you. He wants to be with his wife, but look at verse 3. She said, I had put off my garment. How can I put it on again? In other words, I've put my pajamas on and I've gotten in bed, and I don't want to get out of bed after I've already gotten ready. She said, I had bathed my feet. How could I soil them again? In other words, my feet are clean. I've washed my feet. I've got in bed. I'm in my pajamas. I don't want to have to get out of bed. And in other words, she's a little frustrated with him that he's come home late and he's been gone all day, and he shows up and she basically says, I don't want to spend time with you. These are obviously just excuses. Could she have put on her robe and gotten out of bed and re-washed her feet? Of course. So these are excuses. So he comes home with expectations. She does not meet those expectations. Conflict arises. She is in no mood for pookie pook, as Topanga said. You want to go back to our dorm and have pookie pook? This is a very typical scene in married life. One partner has an expectation of how they will be treated, how they will be loved. The other partner doesn't see it that way, or doesn't feel that same way, or doesn't meet that expectation. So that the original partner doesn't get what they thought they were going to get, and then conflict arises. So here is the question. What do we do when conflict arises? What do we do when a disagreement and an argument, let's just call it a fight, what do we do when that happens? I'm going to give you those 3 R's. First, respond to each other in love. Notice how Solomon responds. He does not react. Reacting will always get you in trouble. Okay? When we talk about how to live as Christians, I will often say this. Christians are always supposed to act, but we're not supposed to react. Reacting is kind of just flying off the initial emotion, flying off that initial thought, and usually you get yourself in trouble if you just react. In relationships, it's the same way. If Jessica and I are having a disagreement, if I just react to something she says, or she just reacts to something I say without us actually thinking about how we're going to respond, then it usually just stirs up more trouble. His initial response here, though, look at this. Verse 4. So she's saying, basically, I ain't coming to the door. Verse 4. My beloved put his hand to the latch, and my heart was thrilled within me. Now that's weird. And I had to do some studying on this, and I had to read a bunch of different books, and I had to there's 2 things in this text that I had to kind of figure out what was going on. Hebrew scholars believe that this language of touching the latch was a cultural thing, basically like giving an I love you Valentine. Okay? He had no intention of going in. Right? So he comes to the door, and he's like, open my love. I want to come in. I want to be with you. I want to spend time with you, whatever his expectations were. When she rejects that, he could just open that door and come busting right on in. He's the king, by the way. But what he does is he just touches the latch, and he lets go and he leaves. And Hebrew scholars say this was a poetic way of describing him simply saying, I know that there's some tension right now, but I love you. That's why she gets thrilled within her. Because see, notice, he doesn't just react to the rejection. He responds. And he does so with love before he says anything or does anything that he'll regret. Do you know one of the things that happens in fights that is unfair is you end up saying something and you can't take words back? One of the great things, Jessica and I have fought, and we have fought, especially early in our marriage, we fought more boisterously. But one of the things that I am so thankful for in all of our disagreements and fights is we never called each other names. We didn't do what Corey and Topanga did there. Now, Corey and Topanga in this episode are just going to kind of like make up and it's just the end of it. But the truth is, when you say hurtful, harmful things, you don't get to take those back. You can forgive and you can reconcile and you can restore, but those things have still been said. And it takes a lot of work to convince yourself the other person didn't mean it. Here, he doesn't say something that he'll regret. And do you know when we react? When our pride gets involved. Listen to me. We react when our pride gets involved. He comes with an expectation. She shuts it down. If he gets prideful and says, I'm the king, how dare she do this to me? Does she not know I am King Solomon? And then he reacts out of that pride, bad things are going to happen. Pride is what makes us just react. Humility helps us respond. He reaches and he touches the latch. I know you're turning me down, but I love you anyway. And then he left and he went for a walk. Because in verse 5, she arises to open to my beloved. My hand dripped with myrrh, my fingers with liquid myrrh on the handles of the bolt. I opened to my beloved, but my beloved had turned and gone. He left. When his expectations weren't met, but he reacts, he doesn't react, but he responds in love. He controls his mind. He controls his emotions. It helps her. It helps her. This touches her heart. She eventually gets up and goes to the door, but he's gone. Now look at verse 7. Well, then to verse 6. I sought him, but I found him not. I called him, but he gave me no answer. The watchmen found me, and as I went about the city, they beat me, they bruised me, they took away my veil, those watchmen of the walls. Now, I want to say something. I don't think that she's literally getting physically abused by the watchmen in the town. She's the queen. Okay? You don't just beat up the queen because the queen's looking for the king. This is a poetic way of her saying, this is how I feel emotionally. I've gone to the watchmen who it's their job at night to know where everybody's at. And I've gone to them and said, do you know where King Solomon is? And they said, we haven't seen him. We don't know where it is. She feels like they beat him, that they beat her up with that answer because she's looking for him. And then look at the end of verse 8. She says, I need to be with him because I am sick with love. All of a sudden now, everything has changed. And it starts with the proper response, thinking, controlling your emotions, not just flying off the handle. And this has changed her. She went from, sorry, I don't have time. I'm already in bed. My feet have been washed. I don't want to be with you tonight. Whatever your expectation is, I'm sorry, I'm shutting it down. To now, she is searching throughout the city for him, sick with love. What changed? I'm arguing from the text, what changed was the way he responded to the rejection by loving her anyway changes everything. Proverbs 15:1, you have this in your notes. A soft answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. What do you think would have happened if he would have spoken harshly to her? Do you think she would have been sick with love? Nope. She probably would have responded. Well, hopefully she would have responded and not reacted, but she may have reacted the same way. This would have been a very different scene if Solomon had been angry and spoke to her harshly. But instead, he responds with love. It changes the whole dynamic of the situation. And her friends in verse 9 say, what's the big deal? I mean, they say, what is your beloved more than another beloved? Oh, most beautiful among women. What is your beloved more than any other beloved? And here's what she says. For 6 verses, she just describes how hot he is. For 6 verses, she just talks about how good looking and handsome he is. She's like, oh, do you want me to tell you how my man is better than all the other men? Let's start with, he is radiant. He's distinguished. His head, his hair, his eyes, his cheeks, his lips, his arms, his body, his legs, his mouth. I mean, she just goes in and says, listen, he is better than everybody else, and here's the reasons why. Everything has changed. I don't want to spend time with you. Sorry, I'm upset with you. I'm mad at you. You've got home too late. To, I'm searching the city and I want my man. So we respond, we do not react. Second thing I want you to see is we run to God. We run to God. People are going to ask her, where has your beloved gone? Look at chapter 6, verse 1. Where has your beloved gone, O most beautiful among women? Where has your beloved turned, that we may seek him with you? We'll help you find him. And here's what she says. She's found him because she says in verse 2, my beloved has gone down to the garden. She knows where he's at. This entire time, he has been in his garden. Remember last week I told you he was a botanist? Eden, what's a botanist? Person who studies plants. He's not a real botanist, but he loves flowers and plants and gardens, and he uses them and he talks about them all the time. Here he goes to his garden. When asked where he's at, she says, my beloved has gone down to his garden. This was his place. This was the place where he could go and process and think through things. This is most importantly the place that he would go and pray. This was his prayer garden. So notice what's happened. He comes with an expectation. She rejects him. He responds with love. He touches the handle. And then he goes to his prayer garden to think, to process, and to take it to God. He runs to God with this whole situation. So it seems that it wasn't just a loving response that turned her heart. It was the work of God. He went into that prayer garden and began praying for her and for him and their relationship. It wasn't just the touching of the handle that changed everything. He went and began to pray for her and to pray for him. It is always good, listen to this, it is always good in a conflict or a fight to get away and to get alone with God, asking him to help you be humble and give what is needed for the relationship. We do not run because we don't want to fix it. Some people do that. Some people, when a fight breaks out or an argument breaks out, they simply want to run so they don't have to deal. That's not what he's doing here. There's been times where Jessica and I have been arguing or we've been fighting and we've both looked at each other and said, there's no point talking about this anymore right now. We're too heated, we're too upset or whatever. I'm going to go in the other room. Now I have one of two choices when she goes in the other room. I either spend that time processing and thinking about what we're discussing and what we're fighting over. I pray for her, she prays for me. Or I sit there and I pout and I get mad and I think about how right I am. And that doesn't change anybody. That doesn't fix anything. And we don't just go in other rooms because we can't stand each other in the moment. He leaves, but he doesn't leave because he doesn't want to fix the situation. He leaves so he can go think, process, and pray. And that is what happens. That's why her heart is changed. God does this. Getting away is not to avoid conflict. It's to make sure that you are filled with grace. Grace that you need to respond to your spouse properly so that God can work on both your hearts. Last R, reconcile the conflict. Now, there's so much more about fighting that I can give you, but I just want to give you these three things. Respond, don't react. Run to God and reconcile. When there is a conflict in marriage, the goal is not to win the argument. What did Corey say? You leave, what? I win. That is not the point of arguing. In marriage, you are not trying to win an argument. You are trying to reconcile a relationship. The queen found her husband in the garden. She finds him. She's had a change of heart. But you know she probably is knows there might be a little tension left. She doesn't know how Solomon's feeling, right? She shows up in his prayer garden. She doesn't know, is he going to be upset with me? Is he going to be mad at me? Is he going to lash out at me? I mean, he responded properly by touching the handle, but how's he going to feel about me now? Has he come in here and been frustrated and angry and now he's going to let me have it? Solomon doesn't even let her speak. Solomon, like a godly man should, takes the initiative. And I want you to see what happens. Look at verse 4. Look at verse 4 of chapter 6. You are beautiful as Tizar, my love, lovely as Jerusalem, awesome as an army with banners. In other words, you are the most glorious thing I've ever seen. Think about this. Just get this imagery in your mind. He comes home hard from work. He's labored hard. He's sweaty. He's dirty. He's tired. And he just wants to be with his wife. She is frustrated because maybe he's shown up late. Maybe he didn't tell her he was going to be gone all day. Who knows the situation? But when she shows up, or when he shows up, she doesn't want to have anything to do with him. So he says, I love you anyway. And he leaves. She goes and has a change of heart, and she goes and she's searching everywhere for him. And the whole time she's searching for him, he's in his garden praying for them, praying for their relationship, praying that they will reconcile. And she finally finds him in his garden, and she comes to him, and she may want to apologize. She may want to make it right in whatever way. And he stops before she can say anything and says, you are the most glorious thing I've ever seen. You are the most beautiful, wonderful treasure in my life. He doesn't sit back and go, okay, what are you going to say for yourself? Give me your apology, woman. No, he initiates the reconciliation. God has worked. And he praises her in joy and pleasure. You can read down through all of verse 10 when he just compliments her and compliments her. He talks about her hair and her teeth. He really loves her teeth and hair because he talks about it a lot. And her eyes, by the way. She responds in verses 11 and 12. She responds in a mighty way. But then, I want to end with this because the two coolest things happen. If you're taking notes, you're going to want to write this down. Two of the coolest things happen. Do you see verse 13? The other people say this, return, return, O Shulamite. Return, return, that we may look upon you. Here's the first really cool thing in the text. This word Shulamite in the original language is the feminine word for Solomon. Okay? Kind of like Dawn and Donna. The feminine word for Solomon. They say after she's gone into the garden and he's praised her and reconciliation has happened, they call her by the feminine name of Solomon. Why? It is a way of saying you two are one. You're one. They're indicating that the loving restored unity and closeness that Solomon and his bride have after this fight. Secondly, the second really cool thing that happens, he calls her Shulamite, right? So he agrees. They're like, listen, you two are one. And Solomon says, yeah, we are. And when you see us, it'll be as upon a dance before two armies. Here's what this means poetically. We were in a fight. We were like two battalions. We were like two armies, right? Going at it, fighting with each other. But she is mine and I am hers. And we reconcile and we make things right. And when you see the queen again, you will see that our relationship is like a dance between two armies. The two armies, instead of fighting, have begun to do what? Dance. How many of you have ever seen the movie Daddy's Home? It's with Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg. It's a hilarious movie. Mark Wahlberg is the first husband, and he's this, bad dude that's just rugged, and he rides a motorcycle and he wears leather, and Will Ferrell's just this nerdy, kind of guy, but he takes care of the kids great, and the son is getting bullied. Now the son is, listen to me, the son is Mark Wahlberg's son by birth, who's now being raised by Will Ferrell. And he's getting bullied. Now we found out later that he's getting bullied by a girl who actually likes him. But they have very different ways of how to fix the conflict. Mark Wahlberg says, we got to train you how to fight. You got to punch this guy right in the face. Now, of course, you find out later it's a girl. You got to punch this girl right in the face. You can't take no crap off of her. You can't let somebody bully you. Now, Will Ferrell's like, I don't know. What if we just have a dance-off instead? What if instead of the fighting, we just dance? Well, it ends up happening. They're at a dance for the school, and the girl is bullying him, and the kid punches the girl right in the face. Right in the face. And her dad steps up like, who's responsible for this? Let's fight. And Mark Wahlberg steps up. He's like, we're going to go? We going to go? And all of a sudden, Mark Wahlberg goes like this. And he starts dancing. And they have a dance-off. And everybody dances. And everybody forgets about the fight. And the fight's over. And they're all dancing. When I read this, that's what came into my mind. Two armies just began dancing. They were fighting. They didn't see things eye to eye. I don't know how, it doesn't express how mad they were at each other, but you got to think there was some frustration and conflict and fighting. But they cared about each other and reconciling more than they cared about anything else. And the two armies at the end have reconciled, and now they're dancing. Now listen to me carefully, and I'm done. Listen. Every eyeball, look at me. When you are trying to make things right in a fight, it is not just about sweeping things under the rug. It's not just about pushing things down. Because when you're in a romantic relationship and you push things down and you push things down and you push things down, eventually what's going to happen? It's going to explode. So it's not about, let's just stop talking about it and tomorrow everything will be fine. No. It's about reconciling together, asking for forgiveness, making things right, really forgiving one another, not holding it against each other, and wanting things to be right. Fights are going to happen in relationships. They're going to happen in marriage. There's no way around it. Two sinners are now living with each other. You're going to get in fights. But how you deal with those fights and those arguments will reveal the purity of your love for one another. God will use it to sanctify you, to make you more like Jesus. And your marriage will be a testimony to a lost world who doesn't know how to fight fair. be a testimony to the glory of God.